Hello and welcome to this episode of Has Entered the Chat featuring Ryan Niemiller from America's Got Talent, Season 14 third place finisher, and was even brought back for the Champions 2. Hilarious comedian. Make sure you check out his website, cripplethreat.com, for tour dates. You can also check him out on social media at cripplethreat8 and listen to his podcast called The Cafeteria. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you get notifications here on YouTube whenever we release a new video. Check out our other videos, and when you subscribe, you'll see future guests as they get posted. Make sure you follow us on social media as well. All the links for that, including Ryan's social media and website, are down below in the description. When you follow us on social media, especially Instagram, you will see guest announcements before they are posted, and even some teasers before they're officially announced. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this interview with Ryan Niemiller. How's fatherhood treating you so far?
Oh,
Minus not sleeping.
It's as of recording, we're 10 days in, and I'm gonna put a caveat at the beginning of everything I say here. Obviously, I love the boy. I'm very excited that I get to be a dad, but I'm finally starting to understand why a lot of people call the first 3 months the fourth trimester, because I've been comparing it. Basically, right now, these first 10 days with my son are the equivalent of when I would do open mics and the entire audience was only comedians. So nobody laughs. You're just getting heckled the entire time because people are talking. My kid doesn't even care that I've been on television. I think that's ridiculous. He has no sense of humor.
I know.
Yeah, that the first it's tough though, because like early on they don't they can't give you feedback in a direct way, so they don't smile, they don't they don't do any of that yet, and that can be tough. Like when he's just chilling and you're like feeding him and stuff, like, oh, this is awesome. When he's losing his mind and you're just like, man, I'm not even getting a smile out of you after this. this is
Right.
nonsense.
Like,
come on, man.
How about a thank you or something?
Yeah, at least something. Come on.
Extra hour of sleep tonight? Like, give me something.
Yeah, just anything. I'll take anything. A high five. Just come on, kid.
But I guess you put it's kind of funny not to compare dogs to children, but I have I've always thought when you like adopt a dog that's like 2-3 years old and it's an asshole, like the dog's an asshole. But when it's a puppy, right, and you have it when it's like really little and you went through the potty training and the, chewing on shit and all that, like when it's 2-3 years old doing asshole dog things, you're like, this is nothing compared to then. You know what I mean? So like,
right, yeah. It'll have its payoff eventually. like we're putting in the time right now to earn all the good stuff. It's funny you mentioned dogs too, because we haven't reintroduced our dog back into the house yet. The dog is staying at my wife's mom's house right now, just to kind of give us a chance to acclimate and give the dog a chance to acclimate. But it is kind of funny because the dog has come over for a visit a couple times to meet the baby. And there's this distinct time period, I guess, with the baby that your dog is smarter than the baby. Because, like, the dog can sit. The dog knows its name. The dog knows when to come over to the dog knows how to get its hand out of its mouth when I'm trying to feed it. Like, stuff like that. Like, all of that kind of stuff. And then I guess there's just a day where suddenly you're like, oh, now the baby is much smarter than the dog. But that day is not today. Yeah, exactly.
What's funny too is, I mean, in most people's lives, other than obviously just the fact that you have a kid, that changes your life, right? So, but in your case, not that you would have a kid just for this purpose, obviously, but
sure.
Like, are you like, hey, maybe some new materials coming about? You know what I mean? Like, I've heard you say like, oh, I'm recently engaged, whatever, in sets before. Like, are you kind of like, obviously not right now probably because you're probably trying to catch up on sleep, but maybe
Sure.
one day you'll look back and be like, ooh, I got all this material.
Oh, I mean, naturally, I'm already writing a little bit, just because that's the way I always write, just as life happens, as things are happening, you know? Like the thing we just talked about with the dog, that's an idea I'm already formulating to use on stage, you know? Like that always happens.
I don't want to spoil anything.
No, totally fine. No, it is always very strange, though. It's one of the weird things about being a comedian is, and people don't mean any harm by it, and I don't take offense by it, but it is odd that, like, no matter what happens in your life or in the world, people instantly think you're going to put, like, a positive spin on it. You know, like right. Obviously having a kid is a positive thing, but people are like, oh, think of the material. And like right now I'm like, oh, think of how stressed I am trying to keep this thing alive. You know, like that's not right. like every kind of thing that happens in the world, people will be like, at least you're going to get jokes, right? You know, like when Trump was elected president, when Biden was elected president, like all these things that people are just like, if they don't like him, like, at least you'll get material. And I'm like, I'm a person too, man. I also just want the world to be good. You know, I don't.
Totally.
Like heaven forbid I ever get like cancer or something like that. And people are going to be like, at least you're going to get some good jokes out of that, right? It's going to, how lucky are you?
You know? Right. Well, and I think like too, and maybe in your case, it's even, you know, more of a problem with, you know, that what you're just talking about than other people because of your disability and like, but you have put such a positive spin on it and such like, you know, made it funny and everything like that. Because a lot of times comedians have to find a way to relate to the audience, right? That's why it's funny, right? Half the time, you know, it's funny because it's true sort of always sticks out to me, you know. Somebody tells a joke about something, I'm like, oh my God, yes, that happens to me, right? Well, you know, very few people have had to go through what you've gone through. So like, I'm curious, like, and impressed actually, but like, how were you able to kind of make something that's unrelatable, funny and relatable?
Honestly, and I don't want to make this sound like it was easy, but as far as like the stand-up part of it, it was very easy for me. And the only reason that is because just naturally throughout my life, when you have a very noticeable disability that you can't like hide, and I don't want to discount anyone that has like a quote unquote invisible disability, those are just as real and just as valid. But if you have an invisible disability, you can go to the grocery store and nobody has to know if you don't want them to. You know, you can just have a day where you can chill.
Right.
I can never do that. That is not something that I have the option for. And just naturally, my whole life, anytime I would meet new people or I go into a new situation, you sort of have to make other people comfortable with the fact that that's happening. It could be as simple as, oh, I go to a McDonald's and I need to make sure they know, no, they don't have to come feed me the food. You know, they don't have to carry it over to me and hand feed the food. Right. You know, it's part of what I've always had to do in some way or another. Sometimes you really have to do it, and sometimes people just go, oh, he's got it figured out. He's an adult. Surely he knows how to do this. It's fine, whatever. And then it was just basically taking that and then putting it on stage. And as far as the actual jokes, a lot of it is trial and error. And this is what any comic has to do. There is some stuff that I've thought is very funny about having a disability that the audience will feel bad for me during it. And that's not what I want. I'm not looking for sympathy. My life is great. My life's awesome. I got a family. My dog loves me. My mom loves me. I got a sweet ass video game collection. Like, my life's good. Okay? So I never want that kind of like, oh. And for me, there'll be stuff I talk about that, like, for me, it's funny because I've either already gotten over it or it's just such a normal part of my life that, hey, we're past it. And for other people, they're like, it's a little much. We don't know how to do that. So it's a lot of it's just trial and error and figuring that out. And it's, you know, I've been doing this almost 17 years. You kind of learn to see how people are going to act to you.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, being on AGT now that you're obviously more recognizable and have had the success, I feel like has that kind of made it a little bit easier to do that? Like, it's not necessarily people seeing you for the first time and having to deal with that, oh, I feel bad for him kind of reaction. Like they kind of already know what to expect a little bit more, if that makes sense.
A lot more than they used to, for sure. So before I got on AGT, every set that I did, and people would always leave having a good time, but I would always have to make them comfortable right off the bat. Because we're sort of trained as people that, like, you're not allowed to laugh at somebody with a disability. You're not supposed to do that ever.
Which
and
is a good thing,
yeah, well, I mean, if it's not mean spirited, you know, yes. Like that's how and again, I have a little bit different perspective because I'm coming from the side of a quote unquote minority or whatever you want to call it, you know. Sure. But like for me, it's always perspective. It's always intent. You know, like if somebody is making an arm joke at me and I've never met that person in my life, I'm going to be pissed. Because, like, even if I'm a comedian, you don't fucking know me. You know, you don't know if I'm cool with that. That's a weird thing to start with. But if my buddies are kind of making an arm joke, it's fine. You know, like there's a different context for things. And I'm always a big believer just in general of picking your battles, because you can get so hung up on the minutia of things that you miss the big picture. Like, I'm more concerned with the fact that people with disabilities have huge issues finding employment than I am that something is like, oh, in golf, it's called your handicap. You know, people will get pissed at that kind of stuff, and that doesn't fucking matter at all in the grand scheme of things. Who gives a shit? You know, like,
it's like, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, you can't call someone a cripple. Yeah, I don't call me whatever the fuck you want as long as you treat me like an equal. I don't care. Like, that's the minutia thing, you know. It's like, don't get so hung up on all this bullshit because you're too scared to tackle the real stuff. I'm more concerned with how, you know, the disability system in this country is so messed up that people with disabilities can't even get jobs sometimes, because if they do, they lose their benefits because the threshold is so low. Like, we're almost forced to live in poverty unless, you know, you know, fortunately I was able to function enough that I could go out and do my thing, and I got very lucky. Because comedy is a very difficult thing. Even if you're really good at it, most of us fail. You know, so I'm very fortunate. But not everyone can do, you know, what I'm doing to kind of get past that. So I'm more concerned with that stuff than the language and all that shit. Just pick your battles.
Yeah, I think people do get hung up a little too. And like, what I was gonna say is, the whole golf handicap thing, a lot of times too, you find with stuff like that, the stuff that doesn't really matter, like you're saying, it's people who it doesn't affect, you know what I mean? It's the people who get offended for other people, you know what I mean? I'm always like, whenever stuff comes up, whether it's social media or whatever, if it has to do with like another group of people that's not, that I don't have experience with it, or it's, you know, it doesn't affect me, I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'm offended for those people. But like, when it comes to equal rights, like that is, like you said, that's what matters. Like, let's not get offended over something that, you know, like you said, the golf handicap thing. I'm not quick enough to come up with something like that. But, but like, let's equal rights for all kinds of people. We have that problem. I know, you know, I don't want to get political or anything, but we have that problem in society just generally. And I think that, like you said, is the important stuff. So I totally agree.
Well, for a lot of people, I think the minutia are easier battles to fight because you don't have to be as brave to do it. Because I think even those people, like, no, who gives a shit? Like obviously, language, I'm not going to say it's not important. I make my living with words, you know, so I don't want to claim that words don't have power at all. But again, it's intent of what things are doing. And... you know, getting all wrapped up on something like a golf handicap, if it doesn't change, no one's hurt anyway. Like, no one's actually hurt by that. So who gives a shit?
Right.
But equal rights for everybody, when there's actual people, you know, their lives are, you know, dramatically affected by it. That's for a lot of people, that's way too far into the deep end. It's a difficult thing to do. And I'm not going to claim I'm like, it's tough for me too. I didn't get into comedy so that I could be the champion of all people with disabilities and show, you know,
right.
like it's tough, you know, I'm just trying to get by day myself, you know, so I don't think there's a right or wrong reason, you know, answer to all this, but I do still say, you know, you got to pick your bet. Just fight for what's important or shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, some stuff requires a little too much effort for some people. It's easy to, you know, sit behind a keyboard and yell at people for certain things, but to actually, like...
Yeah, because then you can log off and you go about your day, and who gives a shit what happens, you know? Right. Like right. People, the social media and stuff like that just makes it real easy to pretend to care, but it also makes it really easy to exit when you're done thinking. Like, you know, like I have such a no tolerance policy with trolls and stuff like that, because once I got on AGT, that was the first time I had any kind of platform where enough people knew me where I would even remotely have to worry about negative social media comments or whatever.
Right.
When you're a traveling, you know, low end comic, no one gives a shit enough to tell you that you suck. You know, like, it doesn't matter. But when you get seen by a few million people, and what I've learned in the 4 years since I was on AGT is, man, if I can't think of a funny joke to respond to those trolls, I just delete and move on, because people who are assholes are not coming back to check their work.
Right.
You know,
yeah,
if they're not a fan of you, they're not going to buy a ticket. They're not giving you any money. They're not following you on social media to begin with. Do you think they're coming back in 2 weeks to make sure that their shitty comment is still on your... No, they've already moved on to be an asshole to somebody else. If I don't have a funny joke I can think of, it's gone, because who gives a shit? It's my mental health is more important than some kind of illusion that I might be soft, because my feelings aren't hurt. I don't care. But, like, man, life's hard enough. Fuck these people. You know, who cares?
Yeah, that's all they want is a reaction anyway. So if you give them that reaction, they're like, yeah, look at this. They're just trying to make you look like an asshole when they're the real asshole.
And it doesn't bother me, man. It's the same way when I play video games. I don't... I never, unless they're my friends, I'm never like on microphone or listening to anybody, because that stuff makes me the worst version of myself. I know who I am. I have a little bit of an old trailer park temper, and I have a tendency to go 0 to 100 really fast. You know,
dude, yeah. Video games was like the social media keyboard warrior before there was the social media keyboard.
Oh yeah, Yeah, I've done said some things I'm not proud of that I would never say under normal circumstances, and I've had to learn that about myself. It's a character flaw of me. I take the headset off and I just play the game and do what I do.
What platform do you play?
Oh, I play everything. So I'm a collector. It's a little hard to see with how we have set up here, but this is my game room here. So all these walls are filled with games here. I think all told, I have like 28 different consoles, about 5,000 games. That is what I do. So,
dude, you are a collector.
Oh yeah. My wife, it's the one vice she lets me have, because in theory, I always joke with her. I'm like, hey, these games have some value. I can sell them. So if you need a kidney, babe, we got kidney money. All right. Don't worry. I got you. I'll be happy to do it. But when I was on the road, you know, a lot of comics that, like, and no judgment towards them, they might like to go out drinking after shows, or, you know, go to strip clubs, or, you know, just do whatever they want to do. I was never that guy. But when you're stuck in cities that you don't necessarily know anybody around, you know, I would just get bored. And you're sitting in your hotel for 3-4 days sometimes. And I started going to little, like, you know, retro video game stores and stuff like that, and just finding certain things here and there. And it snowballed on me a little bit. I'm a little overwhelmed, but in the best way possible.
I mean, those like old video game stores, they're hard to find, but when you find them, they're really cool to like walk through. I've seen them at like flea markets, or just like randomly in small towns, like big cities. Like, you gotta find them, but they are cool to, like, it's almost like a little trip through time.
Oh yeah, I love it, and I like the display. I like the aesthetic of it as well. I know intellectually with how emulation works and digital, I could be saving so much more space. But like right now, I like having big shelves of games that I can pull off and take a look. And I can remember, oh, I bought this when I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or whatever it was, you know. Oh, a fan gave me this in Pennsylvania. Or, you know, it's a nice kind of cool thing. And again, if it ever gets to be too much or my priorities change, hey, I can get a little money for it and buy a boat when I go through that midlife crisis.
There you go. I remember, and I mean, this could have changed, but I remember a friend of mine and I, you know, I'm 36, I just turned. So, like, we had...
Happy birthday, happy belated.
Oh, thank you. It was a month ago. It's not as super belated, but...
But
thank you anyway. I appreciate
you're closer to it having just passed to your next one. I'm allowed to say it.
That's fair. But anyway, so yeah, we had like Nintendo, Sega, all those different ones. I remember there was a game we had when we were younger. It's called Earthbound. I think it was like a Nintendo.
Yep.
Maybe
Super
Nintendo.
Yeah, Super Nintendo.
Yeah, and like when we were maybe college-ish, we realized that game, like if you have like all the stuff from that game, it was worth like, I forget how much money it was, but we were just like, wait, what? Video games are actually worth money? Like if we would have held on to that thing, like it's so wild. Like you don't think about it.
Yeah, it's people know about it now, so it's gotten a lot harder to find deals and find stuff. Most of the really good deals I've gotten are from people who know how much it's worth, but they just want it to go to a good home because they know I'll appreciate it. I'm not like a reseller. I wouldn't take your stuff and then immediately make a profit off it. I'm just not that guy. Right. So I found, generally speaking, and I'm this guy too, if you have to get rid of your stuff that you really cherish, most people don't care about the financial aspect of it. They just want it to be appreciated. They want it to go to a good home. You know?
Yeah, they don't want you to flip it and like a house flip.
Exactly, precisely. But yeah, now people know what stuff is worth. But oh boy, like the people who got in on this early, like I have a real good friend back home in Indiana who has a complete NES in box collection, and he got them super cheap because he pretty much had the whole thing done by about the year 2000 before people were really doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's it's worth a little bit of money. We'll say that.
Dude, I remember. I don't remember if it was Nintendo or not. I never had like GameCube or anything, but I had either I or my neighbor had the Super Nintendo, right? Sega, I think my neighbor had. I had at some point or another, not all at the same time, PS1, 2, and 3, plus Xbox and Xbox One. And I just remember and like a Game Boy Color. I don't know if you do go like mobile stuff too.
Yeah,
or you just console?
I have a lot of handheld stuff too. Yep, if it's a video game, I'll play it.
Dude, Game Boy Color, that was like the biggest thing. And I like went back. I used to play the Pokemon games on there, right? I never collected the cards when I was little. I barely watched the show, but I love the game. And like as an adult, I went back and found some old like Game Boy, and I think it was a Game Boy Advance at that point. You couldn't even find a Game Boy Color anymore. And then I bought like the Pokemon games, and here I am like mid-20s or late 20s playing Pokemon on a little Game Boy thing just to relive my childhood a little bit.
I always look at this, and it goes back a little bit what we were saying with people picking their battles and stuff, that life is hard, man. There's a lot of shit that can overwhelm and take us all down. Like the amount of negativity that's not very hard to find in the world. Yeah. If playing some Pokemon puts a smile on your face for a day, play some goddamn Pokemon. That's what I say. Life is too hard. Like, and I learned this very young, being a pro wrestling fan as well. Like, I'm a huge wrestling fan, and people always give you shit for that. And man, when it comes to people's hobbies, I'm not talking about their politics or their views on stuff. You know, none of that shit. Just a hobby. That just something that makes you happy when you have time to yourself. Yeah. What kind of prick are you if you give somebody shit for liking a thing when they're by themselves? It doesn't even matter to you. Shut up, you assholes. Just let. So totally. I always say that, man. There's no such thing as being too old for something. it's perspective. Like, obviously you want to keep your don't make yourself homeless because you're wasting all your money on Pokemon and you forget to pay your mortgage or whatever. But it really doesn't matter. Like, just have fun. Life is way too short and way too hard not to just enjoy yourself a little. Think I might have lost you. Think you might have froze on me.
Oh, you there?
There, you're back. Yeah, you froze on me.
Okay.
You had a nice smile on your face, though. I assumed you just really liked my point that I was making there. You were just really into it. So, in summary, fuck people who give you shit for liking what you like. Just enjoy it.
That's a good summary. I like it. And I see behind you too. You have the Ninja Turtles. Are those action figures? It looks.
Yes.
Like
yeah, those are the figures.
Okay.
They're from the newer batch. That is something. Eventually, I want to collect more of those too. I always have to be very cautious with that with my wife. Mostly because like my wife and I have a wonderful relationship. She is very supportive. Like we live by that philosophy. She's not nearly as into video games as I am, but as long as, we're saving money and we're paying the bills and it's extra money, she doesn't give a shit.
Right.
She's like, for her, the only thing is like, it can't overwhelm the house. Our living room,
mortgage money to pay for it.
Exactly. And our living room can't become an arcade. Like, we have to have spaces.
As cool as that would be.
Oh, 100%. Even when we had the baby, I say this like half jokingly, and of course I was willing to make the sacrifice, but the baby's room was my second game room. We had the space where I could have two game rooms, and then once the baby was coming along, I had to consolidate a lot of that into here. A lot of it I have stored down in the garage now. But yeah, so that's sort of the rule, is just as long as that, and because if you gave me unlimited space, man, I would be collecting toys, video game. Like I'm a collector at heart. It comes from growing up really poor in a trailer park and seeing all the stuff that you wish you had that you couldn't afford, or so like now that I have money and I'm an adult and like I can do whatever I want, your brain goes, I'm gonna go buy all these G.I. Joes and Ninja Turtles and He-Man, like all the stuff that you wanted. So I have to kind of keep myself in check a little too.
Yeah, I've done the same thing, but usually it's ice cream for dinner for me for some reason.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm an adult. I can have ice cream.
See, my wife loves that. That was about the weirdest thing she did craving wise, because she didn't have like the so many people make the cliche. Oh, did she like put pickles in peanut butter, like whatever things that they do. My wife just sometimes I'd be like, "What you want for dinner?" She's like, "Frozen yogurt." That is the only thing I want to eat right now. And I'm like, all right, let's get some frozen yogurt then. That works for me.
You're like, hey, that's easy. Well, hey, we're almost at time, and we didn't even talk about AGT yet. I do want to talk real quick about it.
Sure.
I mean, it's funny because when I went back and realized which season you were on, that was 2019, and I was like, it feels like it was more recent than that. I don't know why, but...
Yeah, well, why it is because of what happened in 2020. Time does not have time has no meaning this last 4 or 5 years. It's a very odd situation. Yes.
Yeah, and is it because it was almost 4 years ago now? Is it kind of hard for you to remember that experience, or is it very vivid because it was such like a huge experience?
As far as like the specifics, it's I don't think I'll ever forget it in any kind of real way because it changed my life. Not to get too deep into it, but it made my career because of that show. That's how I was able to reconnect with the woman that became my wife. Now I have a baby because of that. Like all this cool stuff happened because of that show. And, there's always things you can be upset about. Obviously, winning would have been cool. Doesn't matter that I didn't. The pandemic... I always put this into perspective. I know it could have been way worse for me. I still have my health. Everything is good there. But, when you're on AGT, if you have a really good run, you get about 1.5 to 2 years where everything is just red hot just because you did well on that show. I got 6 months or so of that before the world shut down. So you can always be like, oh, well, that sucks, my life. But man, I used to have to do, sleep in my car to make $100 because I couldn't afford a hotel to get to those, so like life is good, man. Life is good.
Perspective.
So that show definitely changed
that
my life.
So.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and what's funny too is like I was looking at like who you were going up against, because I remember like watching it and being like, this guy's awesome, right? And I was like, how did you not win? And I went back and looked, and like you had some really stiff competition that season. Cody Lee, who won, was like,
yeah, I didn't win because of fucking Cody Lee. Just saying right now.
I mean, like he was amazing. You did beat out V Unbeatable, which to me, like I've been watching this show. I think the season I saw you in was probably the first or second time I watched it. V Unbeatable was like one of my favorite acts. Like they were just out of this world, and like you beat them out. So I mean, to me, that's really impressive.
I'll tell you a story, and it's been a while since I've told this story, but this is 100% true. So the season that I was on, when we got to the finals, and I like my goal was to make the finals initially before it even started. Again, I wanted to win, but if you make the finals as a comedian, you get to be a touring headlining comedian now. That's what I wanted.
Right.
So we got to the finals. Everybody did their performances. I thought my final performance was really strong. It was probably my favorite set of all of them I did. But looking at the competition and just how things were going to happen, I thought I got fourth place. I thought Cody Lee was obviously the winner. I think most people knew that, and I joke around a lot, but I'm still really close with the family, him, his mom, cool. There's no animosity whatsoever. I joke, it's a joking thing, but clearly he was the winner. That was the winner. I assume V Unbeatable was going to get second because they were the like even being there. I was on like every round with them. And they were amazing. It was astonishing to see that in person. And they were all great kids. They were the sweetest kids. Like their story of how they got there and just what they were doing was amazing. I thought they were second.
Totally.
I thought Detroit Youth Choir was third just because they had a good story. And having that many kids, you get so much organic support from like all of their
Right.
The choir is like 60 kids plus all the parents. It goes out.
That's a lot of votes right there.
Exactly. and then I was like, I had a really strong, and I had the Chris Jericho connection, so wrestling fans who like that might have done it. I had done a bunch of stuff on Pat McAfee's show. Because I was still living in Indianapolis at the time where he was based out of. I thought I had a pretty good organic, and I thought I just had a good set. And so I was like, okay, I probably got fourth. When we get to the announcements, Voices of Service with Fist, which was also what I thought was going to happen. I'm like, okay, I looked at who was around. Everyone else, the top four was there. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be fourth. When Terry Crews announces fourth place is V Unbeatable, I'm glad the camera wasn't on me because I didn't say it like loudly. But I went, what the fuck? I like said that to myself because I was so convinced. I wasn't upset with fourth. There was no like sadness to it. But I was just like, I got fourth, and I was like, oh fuck, that just happened. Then I was like, maybe I did win this thing. Who the hell knows what happened now?
Right.
So,
anything can happen at this.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, before I let you go, I do want to let everybody know, and again, I'll if you're listening or watching, this will be in the intro. Links will be down below. But you have an Amazon special, Unarmed and Dangerous.
Correct.
Which is really good. I definitely recommend checking it out. Now, question for you. Maybe you do or don't know this. When I went to watch it, it wanted me to rent it, but then it let me rent it for free. Is that normal?
It might have been some kind of special they were running. I don't know. Okay. Every time I look at it,
I'm also a Prime person, so
yeah, I don't know if Prime because I'm a Prime person too, and it gives me a discount on buying it and renting it. They might just run certain little specials on their own. There, I'll be honest. When it comes to that stuff, it's not like we get to be like, yeah, this is the free weekend. They just kind of do their shit once it's up there. So.
Right. I wasn't sure. It wasn't if they're like, Ryan, tell everybody it's free this weekend.
Yeah. I would obviously prefer like everyone, if you buy it, that's great. If you want to rent it, that's great. Just watch it. If it pops up free, rent it for free. If you want to support a little bit more, it's $9.99 to buy it full price. It's not crazy, but just watching it is cool enough for me. I'm not one of those guys who does the hard sell.
And it was well worth it. It was well worth the $0 I paid for it.
There you go. Perfect. That's all I look for. I want you to get your money's worth. So I'm glad I hit that.
Yeah, right. And you're also touring. I know when we talked, you actually have one coming up, I think, in June around me. So if anyone lives in the Pennsylvania area, Pottstown, you'll be at Soul Joel's, but you have plenty of other shows.
I believe that's June 22nd, I believe, is the Soul Joel's one.
Yeah,
22nd or 23rd.
Yeah, right around there. About a month from when we're recording now. Now the new baby, is that going to mess up any tour dates, do you know?
It already kind of has, but nothing that's already scheduled, you know?
Okay.
So it's this summer, I am doing a lighter schedule than I might normally do because I want to be home, you know, not just to help my wife, but it's also my son. I want to be around.
You want to spend some time with,
you know?
Right.
So a lot of the work trips that I'm making though, like for I'm in Oklahoma, June 2nd and 3rd. I'm trying to do kind of 2-dayers, you know, where I can kind of get in, get out, because it's just the sad way that the world works, especially with you know, maternity and stuff. After 2 days, you got to bring the baby home, and you still got to pay the bills. You know, it would be great to be able just to stay home for a year and not work and just be with the kid and bond and all that. But yes, I gotta you gotta pay them bills. So I'll be going on the road a little bit. You can go to cripplethreat.com. All my tour dates are always up there with ticket links to anything. I tour all around the country. Cripple Threat 8 is all my social media. All of that, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. I'm always on there interacting with people. And then I also have a podcast that I do with a couple buddies of mine, Johnny LaQuasto, who used to work for WWE. He does a lot of like boxing and MMA announcing and stuff. He's also a comedian that I started with. And Brent Terhune, very funny comic out of Indianapolis. It's a podcast called The Cafeteria that's out every week. So give that a listen. It's just general stupidity, which is our wheelhouse. So...
Well, that's kind of, I mean, I basically say that sometimes I just speak general stupidity on here. So,
you know, it's
you,
perfect.
The guests, are the ones who saved me. So
it's so much easier to prepare for a show when your whole show is just being a dumbass. It's the best.
Thanks again to Ryan for joining the podcast, and thank you for watching. Before you leave, make sure you go ahead and follow Ryan with all his links down below in the description. Follow us on social media, subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you get notifications. That'll do it for this episode. If it's your first time watching, thank you for checking us out. If you are a returning viewer, thanks for coming back, and I hope to see you all on the next episode of Has Entered the Chat.